Well, good evening, everybody. We certainly appreciate everybody showing up to do some technical training on the new VX product. My name is Michael, and I am the Technical Services Manager at Energy Equipment. So my responsibility is to do product training, provide design guidance, and work with all of our contractors on any of their hydronic questions or heat pump questions, etc. I'm joined tonight by my good friend Christopher, who works with IBC. Chris, take a minute and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Chris Cameron. I am a technical sales specialist based out of Western Canada for IBC. I work specifically out of the Calgary region, but kind of work with everybody across Canada to support IBC on the technical side.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Chris. So the plan today is we're going to run everybody through the VX product as we see it now. Obviously, it's going to be a technical presentation, but we can't cover everything in about 30 minutes. So we're going to sort of go through what the VX unit is, how Chris and I see it fitting into the IBC lineup. And obviously, at the end, if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer those questions. A couple of quick housekeeping items. There are two handouts that you'll want to download. One is the VX sales brochure, and the other one is the VX specification sheet. The installation manuals for this unit I will distribute probably in about a week's time. As for when you will begin to see stock in Ontario, our expectation is in the next week or two that Energy will have some stock, and you guys will all start to install and design the systems. Everybody is on mute, but if you have a question as Chris and I are talking, simply just throw your question into the question box, and Chris or I will be happy to answer the question for you. So right off the bat, the big thing to keep in mind with the VX series is it really completes the IBC offering. IBC is a fantastic product with a great history. The VX is basically that middle of the line, that better option that we haven't had the option of seeing yet. We've had the SFC, which is the good option, and we certainly have the SL option, which is really, as far as Chris and I are concerned, is the best residential boiler on the market. And so what the VX does is it sort of fills that hole in the middle where, yes, you want the functionality of the SL, but you don't quite need all the features that come with an SL, but you don't want to compromise either. So it does offer a lot of great features to the contractor, the builder, and of course the homeowner. The VX will come in three different sizes. So the VX110, the VX150, and the VX199. Just like with the SF Superflow product or the SL product, you can figure out the BTUs based off the model. Looks somewhat similar to the SL, as you can tell by the look. At this point, there will be three models, and they will all be hitting the market at the same time. As far as certifications and warranty on the product goes, it is a fully approved product. It's completed. Chris and his team out west have done extensive field trials. We've done field trials in Ontario. It's a rugged product that's going to really meet our needs well. As far as the warranty goes, it comes with a 15-year limited heat exchanger warranty. It comes with a 5-year parts warranty, and of course has all the approvals that we expect, whether it's the ASME or the Energy Star and the Intertech. We're going to talk really quickly about the control interface that comes on the VX series. So to the right, you can see the V10 control interface. Those of you who have done SL boilers in the past, you'll recognize this. This is the same control that you're used to. What's different about it is the team at IBC, the engineering team, have really enhanced the overall look of it. So the V10 control has that express setup where you can program the boiler in seconds. One of the things that Chris and I like to do when we talk to a contractor that's never done an SL is point out to them, you can set your loads up this and you don't need a manual. You can just get right in front of the boiler and you can do it. The other nice thing about the V10 control in the VX and the SL is that, if you're a more experienced guy like Christopher, you can go in and you can fine tune and dial in a whole bunch of settings, or you can simply choose not to. It's entirely up to you. Obviously, the remote monitoring and diagnostics is a very cool tool. We can do this through the V10 portal, which is built into the unit. There's no charge for it. You can do easy USB programming. So if you have predefined settings that you like for your IBC boilers, you can just plug in a USB stick and do it. I personally have never done it just because the express setup is so easy. I've never had the need to plug a USB stick in to program it. Another really great feature is the intuitive alert system that gives you the detailed error messages. All of that remains in the VX unit, just like we're accustomed to with the SL equipment. It has things like the visible flame current data for troubleshooting. It has a really nice simplified load combining and zoning. It has over-the-air updates, or the device can be updated by USB. What we like about that is you might buy a boiler this year, and then next year IBC might release a whole features to those boilers. You aren't paying a penalty by being an early adopter. You can very easily update the software for that unit, which makes a really big difference. It also has 2 external safety interlocks for the boiler, and you can cascade up to 4 units on this V10 VX control. Continuing on that, obviously you have remote access through the portal, which Chris and I are not going to talk too much about today. But if you haven't used the SL portal, it is no charge. Let us know. We'd be happy to set up a standalone training session on that. It has a testable high limit, which you can test and reset directly in the equipment. It has a low water cutoff that meets CSA B214 and is again testable and resettable on the touchscreen. It has a really nice error menu set up where you can clear the errors very quickly. You can see the errors, etc. It has a really slick vent material temperature management system where you have the ability to go in and specify your venting type, and it's smart enough to make some changes to the unit depending on what vent material you are using. It has real-time diagnostics capture, and again, a favorite of mine and Chris's, and certainly anybody who's worked on this unit, is the test operation menu. It is one screen where we can go and really drill into what this unit is doing. So you'll notice at this point, a lot of these features, in fact, almost all of them with some little nuances, are in the SL unit. So really the VX unit is carrying over the bulk of the SL control features, which is great for the contractors in the field that really like that SL control. As far as performance goes, if there's one thing about IBC, they focus an awful lot on engineering. And part of doing good engineering is involving me and involving Chris, but more importantly, making sure the product gets out of the contractor's hands so that you guys and gals can give us the feedback and can give IBC the feedback so they build a really good unit. So you can see by the photo on the right-hand side, this takes the SL unit, and really builds on that. It's easy to get at. There's very few moving parts inside of it. So it's a 95% AFUE. It's a great unit, state-of-the-art, fully automated construction. It's ASME 439 stainless steel fire tube heat exchanger. It has baffling to ensure good heat transfer and long life. And the thing that we really like is it's 100% factory tested. So when you call my team or if you call Vancouver looking for tech support, we can eliminate a lot of things because we know it ran at the factory. So that helps us really narrow down what potentially you could be seeing in the field. And the VX unit has a turn down ratio of 6.5 to 1, which means that you really get that nice deep modulation if you have small loads of radiant running, or you just need to be, pedal to the metal. It's time to heat that indirect up. This control, just like what you're used to in the SL, has got a built-in 4-load pump or valve control. It actually can control 5 pumps, so you have the 4 loads as well as your primary pump. It also has the patented moisture management system. So what this does is it protects and ensures the long life of the unit itself. It has reverse flow detection. It has built-in outdoor reset control, and as mentioned earlier, it's got a built-in CSA and UL approved low water cutoff. So as far as safety features goes, all of the safety features that you would expect from a boiler are built into this unit, which is nice. Obviously, anytime that Chris and I are talking about safety features, you want to refer to your local jurisdiction, read CSA B214, make sure you actually are meeting the requirements for your local area. One of the things we really like about the SL boiler that's continued in the VX is that it's a really easy unit to install and service. So it's got universal parts. Really, the only thing that's different about these units, the entire line, all the parts are the same with the exception of the heat exchanger and the burner. So when you put a VX unit in, all those parts are going to be readily available to you. You can fit them in a nice little box. Makes it really slick from an installation and service standpoint. As far as venting goes, it's approved for CPVC, PVC, and polypropylene, and it has some of the longest combined vent lengths. There's a word for you, Chris. Up to 240 feet. Now, this unit, even in the past, has always stocked the residential units in natural gas and provided a propane orifice if you're doing propane. IBC has gone in the same direction, so they're going to be stocking or selling these units in natural gas, but they'll include the orifice, so if you have to do the fuel conversion, it's no issue. And obviously, just from the standpoint of the design of the unit, it's easy to inspect the heat exchanger. You can see the components. You can address the condensate. It's a nice, clean, simple unit, as you can see from the photo. Now, one of the most important features as far as I'm concerned, and I've said this for many years, it's become more relevant as a result of COVID, it's Canadian made. You know, we don't want to harp too much on it. There's a lot of great products out there, but the fact that this is a Canadian made product, it's employing Canadians, and certainly it's giving you guys the opportunity to do business with fellow Canadians. As far as I'm concerned, it may not be the #1 feature, but the fact it's Canadian made, I'm very proud of that, and it makes a difference from the standpoint of Eden Energy. Right now, what we're going to do is Chris and I are just going to sort of run through the entire breakdown of this unit. So right off the bat, one of the nicest things about the boiler is you can take that top access cover off, and you'll have access down into that unit. You can see everything very clear. It's a great way to sort of get access down into the unit should you have to do any service on it. As far as the connections on the top, so it does come with 3-inch connections for the air intake and the exhaust. Do you want to just take a quick second, Chris, and just sort of run us through the venting strategies that IBC has been successful?
Yeah, absolutely. Very similar to a lot of condensing appliances. We kind of had sidewall options. We have the ability to use room air for intake. You can also bring sidewall intake or through the roof. Exhaust is kind of a unique setup. One thing that is unique to our venting, this plastic vent duct changed from our previous stainless steel. We now have a full polypropylene assembly in that venting assembly. We have a nice big test port. That was something that came with that polypropylene adapter. We got a lot of feedback from customers that the flue gas analyzers they were using have a much fatter probe. The more commercial style ones have a bigger probe. So there's now a bigger plug there. You can actually even, it even comes with an adapter if you want to measure pressure on that location. It comes with like a little nozzle adapter. But to exhaust for these units, if you're using polypropylene, the intake and the exhaust ducts now have a dual gasketed system, so it'll actually accept polypropylene without having to use an adapter, which can save you a couple bucks. You know, instead of having to get an appliance adapter, you just got to make sure you get that duct all the way down. Sidewall venting, we kind of have a unique adapter situation. We use kind of a snorkel style where you snorkel downwards 90 with the intake and you snorkel up. You'll see kind of a unique design. If you've installed IBC for quite a while, we've kind of iterated on this design quite a few times, but the current version we like and has served us really well is the 45 with a piece of pipe slashed on the horizontal. Kind of makes a chimney and a very sharp angle. It actually protects the exhaust from from wind, as well as makes it sharp enough that it doesn't create that icicle effect you see on a lot of modern condensing appliances. For concentrics, I don't recommend them in colder climates here in Alberta, Ontario as well. I believe it gets a little cold there every once in a while. I'm sure you guys are in the same kind of climate, but we highly recommend taking a look there. You do have the option if you are going through the roof to use a concentric, that does work, but we don't recommend them on sidewall. But you also have the ability to pull from room air, or if you're going to exhaust through the roof, you can pull from sidewall if you want to do your intake instead of running them both up that way. That being said, we also have a inline fresh air intake filter kit. That's really awesome if you're in an area that you're worried about the fresh air coming into your boiler being potentially contaminated. I deal a lot with rural properties where there's a lot of dirt roads or dirt fields or farming fields, or even in the city where some of those areas can be really nasty. It's definitely worth having a look, and that's an optional add-on that you could talk to Mike about later.
Yeah, so venting wise, you're not going to have to learn anything new. It's the same tricks we've done with the SL and the HCDC, and now of course the Superflow. You definitely want to pay attention to those venting terminations. It is certainly critical that you make sure you get it right. But if you follow the path that Chris has outlined, we've had very, very good success with this venting arrangement. Of course, then we have the Sim Plus. So this is a really nicely designed product by IBC. So this is one piece that was made by IBC, and it's been proven in the SL equipment. So this provides your ignition, flame proving, and flame safety monitoring. It also has direct control of the combustion fan and the gas valve. So really, when you look in this unit and you see so few parts, the reason you're seeing so few parts is because of the fact that IBC has invested so much time into engineering 2 parts of this particular unit, which is the Sim Plus and of course the V10 control that we talked about before. So it's got a lot of really cool features. It's got the low water cutoff, it's got the high limit manual reset, it's got independent temperature sensors. So that would be the vent stack, the boiler high limit, boiler supply, boiler return. So all that stuff we talked about with reverse flow, et cetera, it's all monitored through this control, and it's a really slick setup. So obviously we're pretty excited to see this show up in the VX unit. So control wise, like the SL, you have the V10 control, and of course you have the Sim Plus module. As far as the gas valve, again, the gas valve, nothing special here, the same as you would see in the SL equipment. The combustion motor is the same. So this is a custom fan design to IBC. So you may have heard some other manufacturers having issues with harmonics and sound with some of the smaller heat exchanger designs. But again, IBC is not trying to sardine 10 other products from other great manufacturers into their unit. They have their own ignition control. They have full control of that combustion motor, and it talks back to their own control. So really, this is the big difference from the standpoint of the fan and its operation. Now, the one thing that's kind of interesting is they do have a slightly different heat exchanger lid and refractory. And Chris, do you want to take a minute and just walk everybody through this change?
Yeah, so the refractory and the gasket are actually it's kind of a unique pattern. It's almost like a cloth material now, kind of a sewn cloth material. So I'm hoping that'll increase some turnaround time on durability, and it's actually a single piece. So the burner refractory and that gasket are together. It's a single piece that comes off. You're able to pop it off, and it's one piece across the entire line. I was just double checking that in our parts breakdown because I wanted to make sure. I know the burner height changes for the different units, but this component, we're always kind of try to chase that serviceability. So if you can carry one service kit around with you, it's better than having 3 different service kits. And the intent is to have this as a kind of a long-lasting piece. So.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Chris. Obviously, the stainless steel heat exchanger here, so it's obviously a shorter version of the heat exchanger in the SL unit. If you look at the pressure drops and the flow rates that we're showing you, the head loss through this heat exchanger is nothing. From the standpoint of the pumps, again, it's going to be a very small circulator that's going to achieve the flows and the pressure drops that you need to achieve through this unit. The gas line on this, so it's a 1/2-inch NPT female gas connection. Again, nothing special here, just pointing out so everybody sees it. You can see what you can do from the standpoint of different gas line lengths on this. And then we have the high limit flue sensor. So Chris, you want to walk us through the high limit flue sensor and how it comes into play on this equipment?
Yeah, so the high limit flue sensor is what allows us, working with the Sim Plus module, to use the different UL 636 approved venting materials. It what allows us to prevent the boiler from ever getting into a lockout situation with your vent material and fully fire that boiler all the way up to 185 Fahrenheit output, our max temperature output using PVC venting. If you have questions about that or if you have issues, let us know. We gladly work. We've got a lot of contractors who have looked at the price of CPVC versus PVC and found it's a huge savings. So and it doesn't derate the boiler. It doesn't restrict the boiler to a temperature output or anything like that. The flue gas temperature sensor always continuously monitors and ensures that we are able to maintain that operation safely for that. Yeah, it's kind of our feature tied in. It was introduced with the Sim Plus units.
Yeah,
there.
so to Chris's point, it's again comes back to IBC makes their own control, so they don't have to worry about is this other control made by somebody else going to interfere here. There is a big misconception, including me when I first saw when this launched in the SLs, that hold on a second, how am I going to heat an indirect? I'm not going to get the water hot enough. And again, it's just a disconnect in the knowledge. You will definitely be able to heat hot water like crazy. It's not going to be you can't go over 140 or anything like that. I know Chris has seen this and I see it myself. I'll go out on SLs to help customers commission equipment and it'll be set for PVC because they don't realize by default it's set for PVC. So people are like, I'm a little nervous about this. Well, there's units out there running to this day that people just, they didn't get an opportunity to come to training and didn't get shown. Like this one setting where it's PVC, you probably want to change that. So
it's also helpful to show inspectors if the inspector is asking, well, how do I know it's safe for PVC? You can show them, and it'll actually. I believe there's an error message that comes up or a warning comes up informing you that if you're changing, you are responsible for what vent material is attached to it. So, and it's kind of hidden in the menu, so it's not like Joe Blow homeowner can go in there and just easily change it and goof around with it.
So the igniter on this one is a different part. So this is one of the parts that is unique to the VX. So this is a, we call it the double hockey stick. So it's a double dual prong igniter. And so basically, this is just the latest iteration that IBC has developed to ensure that you get good, reliable spark. IBC, they don't have to make a lot of component changes because they put a lot of investment in giving us the best component every time. But some things they've tweaked over time. Igniters has been one of them. They've progressively been making igniters better and better, which is great. So this igniter is going to be unique to the VX unit. And then the other thing they put in this unit is they have a manual air vent now. So this is a nice little way to bleed some of the air out of the system. Obviously, there's some other ways you can do that as well, which we can cover in a different training event. But the manual air vent is a nice addition to get the air out of the system. And then we have the supply and return pipe unions that are on the supply side, obviously, and then the other side you can't see. We're hoping you don't ever have to use these unions, which is why Chris and I have also thrown in some photos specifically of a dirt separator and a PuroPal. The only reason you would have to crack into this heat exchanger would be if you put water in the system that is, not acceptable. There seems to be a big misconception that, if you got a glass of water out of the tap and if you can drink it, you can put it in your boiler. I can tell you the filtered water at my place is 400 parts per million, which is well beyond the 150 parts per million that you're allowed to put into the heat exchangers, whether it's fire tube or otherwise. Chris, what has your experience been out west?
I think the biggest thing for contractors is understanding that water treatment doesn't have to be painful. It doesn't have to be a huge misstep. There's lots of excellent partners. Mike has put up a couple here. Calefi, Axiom, Addy. A lot of these partners are making easy to use. On install. PuroPal is a great example. You can literally hook up a garden hose to it as you're filling the boiler instead of just directly filling it into your system. You can run your city water through this, and once the resin changes color, depending on how hard the water is, that'll dictate how fast that resin gets used up. But it can allow you to make water treatment easy and simple. It's not something that should be painful. We highly recommend magnetic dirt separators, even on new install systems, but I would almost make it mandatory on retrofit systems, especially if they were cast iron or any boiler that you were concerned about the heat exchanger potentially not being as sensitive to water quality issues. It just makes it easy. The benefit and kind of the reason we wanted this slide was to show it's simple and it's something that you should reach out to your contractors and your clients about and just add it onto the quote. It can help you differentiate yourself against a competitor as well. When you've got a technical team like Mike's, you can show that, hey, not only am I taking care of your boiler system, but I'm taking care of the lifetime of the boiler system. I'm not Joe Blow that's going to disappear. I understand and want to treat this system and kind of run it pristine for its entire lifetime. And it'll save you a lot of heartache doing water treatment up front instead of reactively, because then you don't have to worry about the supply and return water unions because your system will be filled with perfect fluid from day one.
Yeah, and certainly to Chris's point, even if I go back 5 or 6 years, water quality was expensively painful. We would use, those of you who've dealt with me know we used a Calefi hydrofill. I'm not bagging on Calefi, they're a great company. Yeah. We bought that hydrofill for $2,500 knowing nobody else would. And I'm not, it's reality, you can't afford to spend that. And those bags were $500 each. This PuroPal is $94 and it'll last you for multiple jobs. It makes a ton of sense. And at the end of the day, again, water quality is not warranted. We hate to see people go down that road and this misconception of if I can drink it, I can put it in. That's simply not true. So we just wanted to throw this in here to point out water quality. Even if that boiler hasn't failed, less than the thickness of a dime of scale knocks 10% off your fuel efficiency. So it may not fail. It just might work like crap because somebody couldn't be bothered to hook the PuroPal to the garden hose before they filled it. So we're trying to make this super easy. We certainly encourage you guys to pay attention to this. If you want to do a water quality session, we do them all the time. Just send me an email. We'll dive more into that another time. The supply water connections, all the water connections on this unit are 1 inch. This is the V10 control. So obviously this is the terminal block cover. No surprises under the box for those of you who are used to the V10 control. You have your line voltage connections for your pumps and or zone valves, depending on how you're wiring it. And then you have your thermostat hookups as well as your interlocks, your outdoor reset, etc. And then obviously the V10 touchscreen display. A little closer look. So again, this is just zoomed in facing down on us. You've got the sight glass on the top. You have the high limit flue sensor. You have the rollout switch. Chris, do you want to just walk everybody through the rollout switch?
Yeah, just like a traditional boiler, it's just ensuring that if that gasket does ever fail, or if you have an issue in the cabinet, it's an additional safety. As Mike said, we've got, there's a lot of safety sensors in this boiler, and a lot of times it'll lock out before it ever gets to that rollout sensor, but it's just nice to have. It's kind of a backup traditional, code requirement, but it's nice to have in the back of the cabinet there to protect your owners and your site from any potential damage.
Perfect. And then obviously the low water cutoff.
Yeah, and as Mike mentioned, our standard low water cutoff. That being said, if your jurisdiction does require an external safety, say you need a flow switch for smaller boilers or an external low water cutoff, we can wire those directly into the boiler as a good option. That's what those two um, blue jumpers there on the inside there are. My brain's frazzled today, but our
Yeah,
safety limits, we have the ability to wire up two of them to prove there. So it's good for meeting all your code requirements.
perfect. As far as accessories goes, so obviously the VX can be mounted to the wall, just as we would expect with the SL or the HCDC. Steve, good to see you, buddy. Steve asked the question, will there be a parts kit? I think I've just revealed the answer. Yes, there will be a parts kit. The good news is that the VX and the SL are going to share an awful lot of parts, so that's awesome. That's IBC thinking ahead and trying to keep the contractor in mind, and frankly me as well. We stock a lot of parts. If we can stock less parts, that's certainly a benefit. Really, there's no urgency in buying parts, but if you're installing a lot of equipment, you definitely want to keep a parts kit for when you have that brownout condition or something that's unintended happens and you need a part for it. Most of the parts are all the same. Chris, I think from memory here, the water pressure sensor is different and the igniter is different. But outside of
Yeah.
that, the parts are
And
universal.
the fan will be proprietary from between those units. But yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So we're going to just spend a little bit of time on the V10 control. We're going to show you some of the screens. Again, not all the screens. We'll do a separate online webinar. I'll actually live set up a boiler on a V10, and I'll likely invite my good friend Chris to join me for that. So basically, the takeaway here is it is the same control as you're used to in the SL. They've just bootstrapped and enhanced the display to make it look a little bit nicer. And they've added a few features that we've requested, and I'm sure that some of you've requested. So we're going to quickly sort of walk through it. So right off the bat, this is the home screen that you're faced with. And really, this is the page that sort of shows you everything about that unit. It shows you your supply and your return temperature. In this case, you can tell it's in standby. Like you don't have to guess, what is my boiler doing? If one load was heating and one load was calling, it would literally say heating load 1, load 2 is calling. Like it's very slick, very intuitive. Really, other than the new look, the big takeaway from this screen is the home button that we've all been asking for. Thank you, engineering. There is a home button, so when you get in, 5 or 6 pages deep and go, I wish I could get to the home screen. IBC once again hits it out of the park with the little things of, hey, let's get a home button on here. The other thing is that if the boiler does lock out, IBC has a really cool error logging system, as you guys will know that have done the SL unit. The only thing that's really changed here is that you can actually access the error logs right from the home screen now. Just like in the traditional SL V10 control, you get in plain English the red lockout on the bottom that tells you what the error is. In this case, our error is ignition trial succeeded. The other thing that Chris is going to talk about is they've changed the way the error log screen looks. So Chris, run us through the change and why it was made.
I would say like the biggest was from contractor feedback to make the error log a little bit more intuitive. We got a lot of feedback that sometimes guys had a hard time going through a lot of logs, or if you had 10 logs that were the same, you just assume the other ones. This is kind of breaking them out a little bit. You still get all the data snapped at the same time, but we're grouping them up a little bit easier. So you can see, oh, I had some low water pressure errors. Oh, I had a temperature probe error. Oh, I had a low water pressure error. They're going to be grouped up a little bit better and a little bit more legible at a quick glance. You have the ability to export them as well. So if you want to throw a USB stick in there and pull them off and go through all of them, you can. And there's no real need. You do see the delete all button up there. That doesn't clear the errors. We'll go through that in the menus. There's a clear error button next to it now, but we don't have to delete the error logs. The logs are super helpful. The only time I would do that is if you were troubleshooting something and you thought you kind of licked it. You can delete them all if you think you got it all your issues solved out there. You can quickly do that, and then you'll have a fresh log. But the export feature kind of gives you that ability to keep a historical log if that's something you're working on. So
Yeah, the other thing to keep in mind too is that if you are using the V10 portal, Again, it's no charge, it's included. All you have to do is literally plug in an Ethernet connection to this thing. You can access this all remotely. Chris and I love it because if a guy or a gal calls up and says, hey, I've got this SL or this VX boiler, it's doing something funky and I can't figure it out. And we've had some doozies. We don't get the easy calls very often. And without that V10 control being online, we would have never found it. The ability to access this data, and that's a free service for all of you. So if you aren't using that, email me, call me, let's get you going, because the reality is you'll know that boiler's got a problem before the homeowner does, and your access to data and our access to data means you're going to be really taking good care of that account. So it's a nice new change. We certainly we like it quite a bit. It's going to make accessing data a lot easier. This is the setup window. So now you've got the home button, you've got the setup. So those of you who are used to tapping the screen and then going to the express setup, well, this is a little bit easier way to get to the setup. You still have the 4 loads, and the setup of them is quite easy. There's, this is the express setup where, again, you don't need our manual. You don't need IBC's manual. Anybody who's never done this before but has a basic understanding of a boiler can do this. We use it as a sales tool. When somebody's like, I don't know if I want to learn a new boiler, you're good with this one. Yeah. And as pointed out at the start of this, you can actually go into the advanced installer settings and you can tweak this. Like, you can fine tune it. You can do quite a few adjustments to this. This is just more for that it's Friday, I got to get the heat on, I'm a greenhorn, how do I achieve it? And then the other thing we're just pointing out here is that they've sort of brightened up and made the buttons a little bit bigger, so it's easier for Chris and I with our fat fingers to get in there and push the buttons and operate the boiler. So it's a nice, clean, simple design. Getting from the home to the express setup is very, very easy. So what we're looking up here is just some of the status data. So Chris, if you want to just take a quick, 5 seconds and touch on each one of these and explain to our guests today what they all do.
Yeah, quick boiler information, running through all the information that's on the boiler, current software releases and things like that. It just gives you kind of an update of what that is. Our load status is what our different loads are. We can actually get into some of the statuses of what the loads are currently running at. You can look at all the sensors and things as it's running. Our sim menu is actually where you can check into all your safety sensors and stuff like that. It actually has a kind of like an operational ladder, so you can see what the boiler's doing at the time. Is it in the burner cycle? Has it had a call for heat? What's the flame signal? This is also where you can test your low water cutoff and your water high limit for code reasons, if you have to do that for government reasons. I've got a couple commercial facilities where they have to do that. That's where you would run those types of tests. Error logs, kind of self-explanatory. We just went through that. Clear errors is where the boiler will actually reset the safety ignition module as well as the V10 control to a green status and then recheck everything. That allows you to kind of see what's happening and kind of clear out and see if you can resolve whatever issue you're having. Network information is just a quick check to see if it's connected to the internet. This is where you would see your IP address, whether it's connected to not only the internet but also to the portal. So that's a super helpful feature. And sensors and channels are just your basic sensors. If you want to see what all the sensors are seeing currently, open, closed, the status, temperatures, and things like that. It's a quick, easy way to check that. So.
Yeah, don't be intimidated by the network aspect of this. We all totally understand that not everybody's a software nerd. It's very easy for you guys to get this boiler online. The first time you go to do it, I mean, it can be tomorrow, it can be a month from now, call us. Give us a call in the office. You should have our number. Speak with myself or speak with one of our tech team, and we'll get you through it. It seems intimidating, but it's very simple and easy to do. The next screen that we're going to go through, Chris, if you want to just give us a run through on this screen and the different options they have available here.
User settings is kind of what your homeowner would be front facing. If you actually lock down the control, this is where they can go into. The only thing as a user that they can do is change the temperature of the indirect if they have a sensor hooked up to it, or change the date and time. There's some reset settings in there if you really want to get super technical, but it also changes where all your changing to Fahrenheit, gallons per minute, if you want to go to bar instead of PSI, things like that. Advanced setup is kind of what we used to refer to as installer settings. It just gets you into that setup even further. That's something I like to use when I work with contractors, but the setup feature works really well. The advanced setup just lets you kind of tweak significantly more information in those settings. System settings is just your basic settings that are currently occurring with the unit. Network settings is all your, like I said, if you're setting up the portal for the first time, this is where you would push the register button if you're used to it. A lot of these are just reskinned from the previous version, so they've kind of cleaned up and streamlined a lot of these things.
And made it bigger, like, so it's more obvious.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it's a little bit easier to read. Engineering and installer options are kind of our advanced options. You'll probably never have to use them, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. And as Mike mentioned, our favorite button, our test operation, when you're doing calibration or troubleshooting, it's a great place to kind of play with our BTU output and see, flame signal, temperature, supply and return temperatures, all that information you need to calibrate is there in one convenient screen, and you can play with it. You can kind of ramp the unit up and down based off your requirements at the time, high fire, low fire, mid fire, whatever you want to do with it.
Yeah, so if you get the complaint of, hey, this unit seems to lock out whenever my indirect kicks in, the first thing that I would do or Chris would do, you go to test operation, you can manually put that boiler, if it's a 199, for example, put it to 199,000. You've got everything there from your fan RPMs, your target RPMs, your flame signal, and you can see, like, oh, it worked great. You can just start creeping it down. You can do half capacity, low capacity. It is definitely a fantastic feature that makes our jobs diagnosing equipment really, really easy. And then the last screen we're going to talk about, so Chris, if you want to run us through the system settings.
Site settings is actually where you would change your flue gas options. Licensing won't be active because on the VX unit, the BACnet is not allowable. Backup and restore, if you wanted to back up the settings, if you've got sticky finger homeowners or the Hutterites like this feature a lot because sometimes the hog guy will get in there and play with the settings. So you can back up if you have a large project that is the exact same boiler system over and over and over again. You can literally plug it in and plug and play off, and it'll copy all your settings. Software
yeah, to
update.
add to that too, Chris, like you guys should not be afraid to enable the installer password. Chris uses that example. My very close friend lives in Utah. He's a software engineer. We hooked him up with an IBC installer for his snowmelt system, and I went to visit him pre-COVID. He's like, hey, let me show you my settings in my boiler. I'm like, what do you mean your settings? He tweaked it. So it was one of those, this backup and restore would have been great. I had to reprogram it, after which I put the installer code on and went for the best. But go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, software update via USB and internet. You can also do a memory card, I believe. I can't remember which one, but a memory card. I've never seen that. Usually USB or internet. Restart boiler allows you to recalibrate the fan while you restart the boiler. It's just you shouldn't typically have to restart it, but if you want to, you can do it from there. And our standard reset factory defaults, that's always helpful if you want to make sure that you've cleaned all the settings out, you want to try something new or clear out everything. New controller or an old controller you were using, you can do that. It'll reset everything kind of back to factory to allow you to just set up all the loads again.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. So, of course, we've talked extensively. The V10 portal is also part of this. So it's a place where you as a contractor can go and see all of your boilers. You can see what the status is. And again, just to make the point, if you call me or you call my team looking for tech support, it's great because we're just going to log into that boiler remotely. We'll see what it's doing. We can see all the lockouts. We can see so much more data than you in front of it. Those of you putting on the V10 portal, if you get that phone call, because we do experience this from time to time, call us ahead of time. Or shoot me a text, shoot me an email, say, hey, I've got this boiler. Let's give me some grief, and we'll look at it before you get there. It's a really slick control. And as I say, we will do a 1-hour webinar to run you through the features, and Chris and I can talk about some scenarios where we solved stuff that literally could not have been solved in front of it. We have some examples of that where we solved it remotely, and there was a lot of techs on site, including us, that we just simply couldn't see it because while we were there, it wasn't doing it. So it's a really awesome tool. As far as the physical size of the unit, as we get to the end of our presentation, they're not very big. I mean, they're tiny units. They're nice and compact. So it's a slick design. This gives you an idea of the height and the width of the units. The water connections come off the right-hand side, and obviously the air intake and exhaust come off the right as well. The condensate trap, you can spin it. We had somebody just ask a question about the condensate trap and the orientation. You can rotate it so it goes whichever direction you would prefer it to go. And again, so this is just the side profile, so you can see the knockouts for the equipment, for the electrical connections on it, and you can get an idea of just how deep this unit is. So, just under 17 inches to just over 19 and a half inches deep, depending on which unit you're looking at. This is mainly just to show you the options that you have available to you. So we're not expecting this to be a piping class. We do lots of courses on that. This isn't that. Really, the takeaway here is to understand that it's piped the same as an SL boiler, only the connections come off the bottom, not the left and the right. all of the pumps that you see here are controlled in the boiler. There is no external relay boxes required at all. So that is certainly a nice feature. One of the other questions we just got asked was about the total VA for these pumps. So Chris, do you want to quickly walk them through the 7 fuses and what the rating is and how they're applied? Chris, I'm not sure if you're muted, but we can't hear you.
Sorry, my dogs are being rowdy, so
Okay.
I unmuted myself. Yeah, the pump rating, each pump has a 5 amp fuse rated for it. We typically recommend having a 15 amp fuse for the entire boiler itself. There's 5 amp fuses for the pumps. There's a single 120 volt rated alarm contact on the bottom of the boiler. Not typically used, but it is something that we don't talk about a ton of. But if you have sites, you know, I've got a remote barn site, I've used it a couple times. Usually it's a spare fuse for me. When somebody shorts out a fuse on our pumps, we steal that alarm contact fuse. And then there's a 2 amp fuse at the very top of the board that protects the board itself. But yeah, pumps, you know, the typical system, this drawing in the bottom right here with all 5 pumps wired. On a typical system with all 5 pumps wired and hooked up to the boiler, you're probably looking at about a 4 amp average running capacity on that boiler, which is pretty impressive. So.
And that's total across the pumps, right? If you look at the newer 0015s or the Grundfos Alpha pumps, I'm a Takeo fanboy clearly, but the total amp draw on all those combined pumps will be nowhere near the maximum rating of 1 fuse.
Yeah, and that's classic old pumps. That's not these fancy new fun Takeo pumps with their variable speeds and stuff where they're using, you know, a quarter to an eighth of the power they used to. So.
Yeah, you can use any residential circulator. So there's a 0013, a 2699F, whatever it is, you can use it here. Obviously, if in doubt, check what the rating is or call us. Just call and have a quick conversation with me or one of my team members. We'd be certainly happy to talk about it. And Steve is just asking the question, so we can actually run up to 5 pumps per system, and that is correct. So you've got your 4 load pumps, plus you've got your primary pump in this case. So all 5 pumps you can run directly off the unit.
And you can run them together.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the positioning and where, you know, Eden Energy sees this fitting in and where IBC sees this fitting in. And we sort of touched on the beginning. It really does complete the good, better, best. So the Superflow is the, I'm going to call it the new iteration of the HC-DC models that are still available. The VX is obviously our new, better option. And then our SL series, which has always been, as far as I'm concerned, the best boiler on the market. For a whole variety of reasons, some of which we've touched on today. So it really does complete that offering, and we're just going to really quickly sort of walk through what the different features are between the different units. So the SFC, which is the Superflow, in this case, the Superflow Combi is what we're referring to. It's your low-cost good option. So it's got universal parts. It only actually has 5 moving parts. It's got a 5 years parts, and it's got a 10-year heat exchanger warranty. It's got a really simple integrated control. It's a 2-temperature device, which is, you know, nice and simple, but ticks an awful lot of boxes, especially if you're doing a condo or small house. They come as a residential heat, or they come as a combi unit, which would also do your domestic hot water. It's up to 96% AFUE, and they come from 99,000 all the way up to 199,000. Now, what's truly unique about this unit is the heat exchanger design. So IBC, this heat exchanger that they have is truly unique in that, you know, you'd have to think long and hard to try to see if you ever had one fail. And Chris, I'll tell you the story, and everybody else, and I'm sure you've heard it, Chris. We had somebody make a boo-boo, and I'm not going to get into the boo-boo, but it had nothing to do with the boiler, and the heat exchanger failed. I tried to get a heat exchanger, and it turns out there's no part in the system, not just in North America, but even in Europe. I was like, what do you mean you killed the heat exchanger? So it had nothing to do with water quality, it had nothing to do with the boiler. It was quite a rigmarole to go through because the design of this heat exchanger is such that it's not going to foul and fail because of the single pass design. That single pass design on the water side, that as you build debris, you're actually increasing the flow velocity. So in a traditional heat exchanger, we got a lot of little fingers running the length. It's not just one tube that goes the whole way. When you plug one of those, well, the water goes to the path of least resistance. With this one, there's only one flow path. So you can't go path of least resistance. You increase that velocity and just sort of, you know, I want to say it pushes the sediment off it. It doesn't mean it doesn't need to be maintained and clean, but it's a very bulletproof way to maintain this unit. The other thing worth noting is the Superflow unit. There is also a tankless model now available. It's called the SFT. So again, it's designed around that same heat exchanger we're used to, but it gives us that 5 gallon a minute that we want for a tankless option. So of course, then we have our VX series, which is our better option. So obviously this is, again, a low cost, better option. It includes the V10 control, which the SL has. So that's a great selling feature. It has a 15-year limited heat exchanger warranty and a 5-year parts. As Chris and I have talked about, it's got universal common parts. So if you put a VX in, you don't have to struggle with where am I getting that part. They, are all universal. They'll be in your parts kit. You can cascade up to 4 units because it is only designed for smaller residential applications. You can't cascade it like you could with an SL unit. The units can do residential heat and domestic hot water, obviously with an indirect. They have bottom supply and return water connections, 1-inch connections, as Chris and I talked about. It's got industry-leading venting lengths and management. So again, PVC, CPVC, or polypro. It's up to 95% AFUE. Has a 6.5 to 1 turn down ratio, and the sizes go from 99,000 to 199,000. And certainly last but not least is the best option. So the SL series is the best option. Again, we love that it's Canadian made, but that's secondary to the fact that IBC's got a great engineering crew. They've got the Sim Plus, they've got the V10 control. And when we go out to site and we pull the lid off that unit, we're not inundated with a bunch of little parts and we have like this Jenga game of, Chris, do you think we can get that pump out? It's in behind these other things. How do we get at it? You don't have to play that game on the SL or the VX for that. So it has a limited lifetime heat exchanger warranty. It has a 5-year parts, and if you register the unit, you'll actually get an extra year on those parts. This unit, because it's designed for much larger applications, you can actually cascade up to 24 units. Again, like the VX, it has residential heat and domestic hot water with the use of an indirect. Chris had talked about this earlier from a licensing standpoint. The backnet does come in these units. So when you're doing that McMansion and they're going to do like this big fancy control system, all you need to remember to do is buy a backnet license. The control guy will do the absolute rest of it. The other thing about the SL, which is in my opinion fantastic, is it has left and right side connections. You don't get bogged down in trying to think about how you're going to pipe this to make sure you don't have a situation where you've got phantom flow or BTUs going someplace they're not supposed to when the indirect is on. A classic example of this is in the summertime. You've piped it intending to heat the indirect, but in fact, you've actually turned the basement into a radiator. With the SL unit, indirect off one side, heating loads off the other, it's a game changer, big fan. It's up to 96% AFUE. It has up to a 10 to 1 turn down ratio, and the residential units come in 85 to 399,000. So that sort of wraps up the whole good, better, best. I will point out on the SL units that they do come in much larger sizes. They actually come up to 850,000 BTUs now. So we were the first in Ontario to put those units in, and Chris and I had lots of talking back and forth because we were pretty excited about it. We put, I believe, 5 of these into one facility. And what I really liked about it was the learning curve was very easy. It's the same V10 control. It's the same clean setup. Yeah, it's a lot bigger heat exchanger. You're putting way bigger piping and controls on it, but it's a really, really Cadillac system. So good is Superflow, better is the VX, the very best is the SL, and keep in mind there's some commercial options. So on that note, I'm going to hand it over to Chris. Chris, you run us through the lineup, how you see it, and talk a little bit about the commercial and what we can expect from the i5.
Yeah, so we've got, just to quickly run through our residential heating, our heating only boilers, our SL as our best option, our VX as our good option, and our HC and SF product kind of in that line. We will eventually have a SFB unit, which will be a Superflow boiler to kind of complement what the HC kind of is in that side. We have currently the SFC from 99 all the way up to 199,000 as a combi unit, which we're very excited about. It's a very nice little combi unit. The DC was its previous predecessor that is still available, kind of a combi up to 160,000. Our indirects, of course, our interstore indirects to make that high volume water heater production, and our Superflow, our SFT 199 as our first kind of foray into the tankless world using that proprietary heat exchanger. It's a really nice unit. And as Mike mentioned, our EX series, we've got our floor mounted 400 to 850,000 BTU, which is based off the same platform. It is a larger unit. If you're familiar with the SL, you can program an EX. It's just the bigger brother, and you can do up to 24 of those together cascaded. The iFire on both the commercial heating and the commercial volume water heater is something that we're going to be revealing in the next few months. We'll get excited and ready for that. If you guys are into the larger commercial products, these are kind of where they're going to be
Teaser.
on the heat exchanger. Yeah, exactly. We won't give up too much information there, but something to be excited about. And our SL series, we always have our rack mounted 260 and 399 system. Kind of some of the big features about all of this is that the EX and the SLs can kind of communicate easily with each other, and that's something to be excited about. So
Yeah, we're doing a job right now where this guy's got a lazy river in his house. So we're going to do a 700,000 BTU boiler for the lazy river. But to Chris's point, we might put an SL 115 on it as well to give us that really deep modulation, because the two boilers talk to each other. It works out quite well. Just to sort of touch to some of Chris's points, the new indirects from IBC, it's not just, hey, we need a new look. It's really cool because there's water connections on the side now, so it can be a lot easier for piping it. Up top or side, I'm good with either, but as Chris alluded to, they got a higher output. So pay attention to that, be aware of that. They're going to cover a lot more in these new indirects. And the other thing to pay attention to on the SFCs versus the VCs is the SFCs, that's a mouthful, SFCs as part of their new design. Some of them have a much higher flow rate on the domestic side, so you'll want to pay attention to that. So, it's a really cool, complete line. IBC started as the leader in residential heating boilers, the premium boilers, with the VFC and then the SL. And now really IBC is offering a complete line for the contractors that really value that, Canadian-made, quality engineered product. So it's pretty exciting for Chris and I to get working on some of these bigger projects and to be able to use IBC on it. Lastly, there is a bunch of literature that is available to you. So the product brochure is available now. The sales specification sheet is available now. You can download both of them. If you want to see a really cool blow-up video of the product, if you go to youtube.com/EatEnergyEquipment, you can actually check out the video that shows what Chris and I have talked about in 3D. It's very short. I think it's about 2.5 minutes. Chris and I were, drooling over it a couple nights ago. And then the last piece that'll be available will be the parts illustrated guide, which is just being finalized now, and then you'll all get a copy of that. So, obviously the VX is going to be an exciting product. Eden has our POs in. My understanding is they're going to be in my stock in the coming weeks, but with the COVID supply chain issues, you never know. So we hate to overpromise, but we're very excited to get them, and I know IBC was equally excited for us to get our hands on them and for you guys to all get them out into the field. So as sort of my closing slide, I just point out that if you guys do have questions, we have answers. I think I've answered most of them, but I see a few more in the question box. So hang around and ask away. If you have a question, type it in now and we'll address it. Obviously, if you come up with something later and you have a question, or you need design assistance, or you just, you need to talk to somebody about an application you're working on, give us a call at the 800 number. We provide all of our in-house tech support, including during office hours and after hours. Alternatively, you can also call out to IBC in Vancouver. But any questions, Chris and I are here to help, and we certainly appreciate everybody making the time to join us. Chris, any final words?
No, I think that's everything, Mike. I appreciate your everybody for taking the time, especially in the evening, guys. I know it's not easy to get away, especially with COVID. Depending on where you are in the world, it's crazy in all sorts of different ways. So yeah, we really appreciate it, guys, and look forward to doing more focused training. If you guys are interested, like I said, reach out. We will gladly work with you guys on projects.
Yeah. So just to quickly run through the questions, I think I nailed most of them, but we're going to just go through them really quick to see if I missed any. So right off the bat, Dale had a pretty good question about propane. Dale, I will follow up with you afterwards. He's got a really unique one where he is, it gets cool, real cool. So we'll have to drill back on that one. Steve had the question, will there be a new service parts kits, which I think we addressed.
Yeah,
yes.
There'll be a new SL residential G3 and VX part kit. It'll be a combination unit together for that.
So you've got a few comments in the portal, which is great. Again, Steve's asking all the great questions tonight. Good job, Steve. Steve's just asking or pointing out we can run up to 5 pumps per system. That is correct. You can run 5 pumps on this, no
You can run them
problem.
simultaneously as well. As long as your amperage draw doesn't exceed 10 amps, you should be fine. You can do that through kind of some zone of and some creative control stuff I've done. We've had some specific heat exchanger systems where we had to do it was a bay system, so they wanted 4 separate heat exchangers. So the boiler pump was running in each zone, could be calling. They were independent, but all 5 pumps, including the boiler pump, could run at the same time if designed properly.
Yeah, there's a lot of capability in this control. If you haven't had the opportunity to do any training with me on that control, shoot me an email, give me a call, whichever works best. We can do a quick, 20 to 30-minute online setup. You can also see the V10 portal because we use ours, so you actually get to see online as we walk through the setup. So we'll do an SL setup with you guys. Chris and I also do a setup on the new VX unit, so it's a good opportunity to see how I set it up and how Chris sets it up, and sort of get our take on how to do things. Looks like the last question that we've got for the night, and I'll comment, and then we'll let Chris comment as well. Is do you guys recommend an indirect tank no matter what the application, if we're doing domestic as well as space heating? So no, there would be scenarios where I would do a boiler and an indirect, and there would be scenarios where I wouldn't. So the really easy cut dry scenario would be an elderly couple living in a condo. I would do a combi unit because the likelihood of them, having a big tub and having baths every day is probably less likely. Whereas in my house with my wife and my 3 little ones, like I'm not sure a combi would be the best choice. We could potentially have multiple showers going at the same time as the washing machine. Chris, what are your thoughts on that one?
Mike kind of hit it on the nail on the head there. I think the biggest thing, we're super excited about our SFC combi, and it's something we love to see out in the field. We don't currently have the functionality to pair up an SFC and an SFT currently. There's another teaser. It's coming. There's no timeline on that, but there will be multi-unit stuff. But Mike hit it exactly on the head. The benefit of an indirect is in a system where traditionally maybe you needed a 75-gallon atmospheric, a boiler recovers really well, and indirects have nice big coils in them and can put out a lot of water. So sometimes you can get away with a smaller tank stored at a higher water temperature. You can even mix down. In Ontario, I know you guys keep all your water at 140. You can mix that down and extend. A 40-gallon indirect now reacts like a 75-gallon tank because the coil can take more, the same if not more heat than what a traditional hot water tank could output, and that allows you for space savings. Especially in custom homes, space is at a premium. Ask any builder now. If you're lucky enough to get a mechanical room, you can hang a boiler on the wall. Hopefully you're able to get that in a nice tight area there. So, but there's definitely applications for both, but make sure that you understand the needs, right? Like Mike said, if you're building for seniors, it's different than if you're building from a family that has four teenagers and 4 showers that are all going to be running at once. That's a commercial setup. That's a hotel. So you want to make sure you're prepared with a nice high recovery indirect in that case, or if your demands aren't going to be excessive, a nice copy unit or a tankless unit could work perfectly for that. So
yeah, so obviously you always want to follow CSA B214. I just did training on CSA B214, I think last month. Some of you I think were there. I think Chris joined us for that. You have to be careful with the tankless, and by no means saying you can't do it, but if you're going to do a tankless and an air handler, it's changed this year. There's some pretty ironclad rules on what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do. We will be doing CSA training again on April 20th. So I'll make sure everybody gets an email on that. You can join us and you can sort of learn the nuances. It's a different course than last time. It's actually the 10 tips to a successful install that meet or exceed CSA. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. As Chris has alluded, in some cases it might be a tankless with an air handler. So absolutely, that's a way to achieve hot water and heating. Just again, pay attention to what CSA says we need to do, including holding it at the right water temperature. It's really important that you do that. The water temperature comment that Chris made, holding the water over 140, that's a health and safety. You kill people. In the same token, make sure you're putting mixing valves in. Mixing valves, make sure that you don't get a hideous burn, something that I recently did in my hand. It's not fun to burn yourself. It's even worse to burn a 2-year-old. The other benefit to a mixing valve is it dramatically increases your actual continuous flow out of it indirect. It's noticeable. So Simon's weighed in with another question. Thanks, Simon. So Simon says, I'm considering an SL for a customer with an old V-spin, old rad, some in-floor being added, and an indirect tank for hot water. Does the VX make more sense? So Simon, I think you sent me that job today, buddy. And I would say yes, the VX does make sense. The VX and the SL are very similar in these, I don't want to say basic, but in these very rudimentary boiler jobs. Really, the edge that the VX gives you is it's a nice compact design that gives you the SL features at a better price. So I would say, yep, it would be an option. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Depending on your price point, right, and feature heavy, if the dual-sided piping speaks more to that job site to clean it up and make it a little bit easier for you to install, then an SL might be an option. If you're specifically looking for anything particular there, but feature-wise, they're very close to each other. That's kind of the benefit. We have a couple things that edge out the SL above the VX, but the benefit is we have that option for you guys. You have a nice, reliable IBC option in kind of a price point, in all three price points, and that's kind of why we like the VX. It fills in that entire range. We have that good, better, best option that you can present to your homeowners. Here's a larger, dual-sided piping. It might clean up that mechanical room a little bit more for you, and maybe the VX is a solid option there. So,
Yeah, it's
especially in
tough. I mean,
retrofits.
the units are all great. Like it might be that you're tight on budgets. You might look at an SFC. To our conversation with Steve, if you're doing an SFC, make sure they don't have a giant soaker tub. But in the scenario where you're replacing this V-spin, the SL is nice because it's easier to pipe. So if you're looking to put it in where you don't have to sort of worry about migration of flow into places it shouldn't be, it does have a better warranty. It does have better options from the standpoint of building automation. There are differences, but again, the VX is a rock solid unit where if you're just throwing one unit in, or even if you're putting 2 or 3 units in, if you don't have these needs for automation and you're not so worried about the enhanced warranty and some of the other features we talked about, then it's a good, better, best. There's no wrong and there's no bad, right? So it's you really can't make a bad choice. Obviously, moving forward, if you think of any other questions, or if you come up with a scenario where you think, I think the SL wouldn't work here, or the VX wouldn't work here, let us know. Shoot me an email, give me a call. Chris and I, we certainly enjoy the challenge of trying to find a job we can't make work. So far, I don't think it's happened. So on that note, I think that we have officially killed most of the questions that have come in. Dale, I'll circle back with you on your propane question. It's a great one. And thank you, everybody, for making the time to be here tonight. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate you taking your time to be here. And hopefully we'll see you at our next training session on April 20th.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I hope everyone has a great evening, and we look forward to chatting with you guys soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. You have a great night, buddy.
You too. Thanks, guys.